Hello, and welcome to the Functional Nurse Academy podcast. This is your host, Melissa Schreibfetter, owner and founder of the Functional Nurse Academy. As always, so great to be here with you guys today. I am joined by Koral Worsham. Koral is another Functional Nurse Academy graduate who has started her own business called Redeeming Roots Functional Medicine. She is a registered nurse with over 19 years of experience in diverse clinical settings. After completing the Functional Nurse Academy back in 2024, she founded Redeeming Roots, where she educates clients on achieving total wellness through a root cause approach that addresses the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. She is passionate about gut health, often calling the gut our second brain. She loves digging deep into gut testing and guiding clients towards optimal gut health as a foundation for overall well-being. Drawing on her extensive nursing background, she empowers her clients to uncover underlying imbalances that contribute to chronic conditions and supports them in making sustainable, personalized life changes. Outside of work, she enjoys spending time with her husband and their 3 children, and she is deeply committed to compassionate, integrative wellness education. Welcome, Koral.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on today.
Yes, it's always so great to connect with you guys because, I see your names like pop up in the program a lot, and I love being able to connect face to face and just talk about all of the great work that you guys are doing because I've said this for a long time. There's a high demand for functional medicine. There are not enough qualified functional medicine practitioners out there, and nurses, we are just so suitable for this area. And I'm also so curious with the nurses that I train. I think that we all have these really unique stories about how we became interested in functional medicine. So can you
Mhm.
tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah. I, again, like you said, I've been in the medical field for about 19, almost 20 years now. And around COVID, my mom was actually diagnosed with Parkinson's, which was just threw us all for a loop. Didn't have any like family history of Parkinson's. It was just out of the blue. And so I dug deep. I sat on the Parkinson's Foundation of the Carolinas committee. I was like all in trying to figure out like what is the best, way that we can approach this. I wanted her to have like the first clinical trials, all the things. Well, I quickly realized that all of the time and effort and money that I was investing into a traditional medicine setting for treatment for her was really not going anywhere. All they wanted to do was just put her on more medications. And my question to everyone was, but where did this come from? Why did this start? Where, like, this doesn't make any sense. And so really just felt the Lord kind of leading me into like a holistic setting. I kept on hearing him tell me, go back to what the scripture says. So then, of course, I was digging into the scripture and just really reading to see, like, okay, well, what does the Bible tell us about medicine? Well, it was all, holistically, like medicinal herbs and things like this. And then we started, the more I dug deep, the more I just fell absolutely in love with functional medicine, and a root cause care. And I just was like, this is absolutely where the Lord just wants me to be. That's kind of where I got started. And then, of course, all the Googling and trying to figure out the best path to go, I came across Functional Nurse Academy. I was between a few different programs that I really wanted to do, but I wanted absolutely to use my experience that I had. I didn't want to start from scratch. I was like, I have all this experience, all this training. I wanted to use that to move forward instead of starting over again in a different field, right? And so found a Functional Nurse Academy and just loved it. I was like all in, I loved the program. I just felt like it was exactly what I needed and the foundation that I needed for that.
Wonderful, and I am so sorry to hear about your mom. I mean, it is and I hear this similar story that
Mhm.
either individuals come to functional medicine because they themselves got sick or or they're watching somebody else in their family suffer, and then
Mhm.
being in that situation, there's just so much in the medical model that doesn't make sense, and we see so many people go
Right.
through the medical model, and the answer
Right.
to everything is more medications, and then the why is just being ignored. And I did wanna
Right.
ask, with your mom's situation, were you able
Mhm.
to help her find better care?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
So, well, not necessarily better care within a conventional setting. And we jumped around to lots of different things, but really the things that have worked the most for her, and it really kept her off of medications for as long as she had, and not she has not truly progressed within the past 5 years. It's been kind of about the same. Is just foundational care, like the important things that you just don't really think about. Right, the gut is huge, which her Parkinson's absolutely rooted from her gut. Nutritional deficiencies was a big one, and really just learning about how difficult it is for some bodies to truly detox, and being able to like truly take a gentle approach with her to do that. She's thriving. I mean, she's a rock star. She's doing well, but from a conventional standpoint, she's part of several different pretty large organizations that I won't name, but they don't all they do is kind of write a script, and don't really, manage her care at all.
And with complex conditions like Parkinson's, we know that it is multifactorial. So we know
Absolutely.
that there is the neuroinflammation, and in your bio you mentioned that you call the gut the second brain, and we know that there's a
Mhm.
gut brain axis, and there's so much evidence of this in
Mhm.
the published literature, but so many of these specialists, they don't keep up to date on these things. And again, I think that the system is designed in such a way that they're so
Mhm.
overworked. But then there also is this, well, I guess I call it the God complex, where I have heard
Right.
one too many specialists say that basically if they didn't learn it in med school, that it's not something that they need to learn, that they've learned everything that they need to know in
Yeah,
school. And then I also think about the complexity of how God designed the human body. And there's so much that
absolutely.
we don't know. I mean, how arrogant is it of us to just think that we know everything and just think that, and again, I think that pharmaceuticals, sure, they have a place in medicine when they're used
Mhm.
appropriately. I mean, for
Right,
example,
right, absolutely.
emergency medicine, but do we
Mhm.
see people with chronic disease processes just thriving on long-term use of pharmaceuticals? Yeah, I mean, we see that they tend
Right.
to get worse. But, no, I love that you really took charge and advocated for her. And then also, I think it's important that we pray for answers and we seek the Lord's
Oh,
discernment. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm so glad that you found functional medicine. And I wanted to
Mhm.
ask also your opinion on this. This is something else I just, guys, I really try not to gripe every single week. But anyway, this is something I have complained about in the past. If you just type in functional medicine, the first thing that comes up is Wikipedia saying it's quackery. And then there's also
Oh,
a
wow.
myth that we don't need to detox. That's what our
Yes,
liver and our
yeah,
kidneys are for. So I would
right.
love to hear your opinion on that, especially, having a close family member like that had
Yeah,
Parkinson's disease. So could you
yeah.
explain to our audience why detoxification is important?
Well, yeah, so absolutely, it is so important, and honestly, we don't realize how much our bodies need help to detox appropriately, right? And so there's so many different things, as far as, there's so many things out on the market right now, like cleanses and detoxes and things like this that will make you so ill. So one of the first things that I think is so important is finding somebody that absolutely can help you do to detox appropriately and safely. That is so important. The other thing is that people don't realize how much, our liver truly needs assistance. We get a lot of liver congestion, where we need to make sure that we're helping our liver cleanse. We need to make sure that we have our detox pathways that are open, right? We need to make sure that we're able to detox well through our gut and our skin, our liver, all these different things that, God created our bodies to be able to do. Sometimes they do need help because of the position or the way, I guess, that we live our all American lives, right? Our food and the environmental toxins and things that we're in every day. So that's one thing that people, I guess, that I would absolutely say is so important. But there's many ways to be able to detox and to be able to help our bodies do that. But just finding somebody that's able to do that and help you safely is so important.
Yeah. And then also for our listeners, just going to PubMed and just doing a simple search for toxicities, you will see a plethora of published scientific literature about the negative
Mhm.
health impacts of things like heavy metals, endocrine disrupting chemicals, and
Right.
even pesticides and herbicides. There's even
Mhm.
studies that show associations to these chemicals, such as the pesticides that are sprayed on food, with things like neurological conditions, cancer, endocrine disruption.
Right.
I mean, the list goes on and on. Like, if I was like, I'm just going to print some studies about how toxins negatively impact our health, we would be here all day. Like, I could like
Yes.
stack my ceilings up with papers. That's how much evidence we have. But despite all of that evidence,
Mhm.
why? I'm just curious, like perspectives of other nurses from like what you see from the conventional system. Why do you think that there is so much pushback on recognizing that something like toxic exposure has negative health impacts? Because we see that they recognize things like toxic lead exposure and they recognize the extreme, but they're not recognizing all of the things that kind of happen in between. And then also the other chemicals and heavy metals that people are exposed to on a daily basis.
Right. That's a loaded question. I think part of that is unfortunately it's political, right? I think some of it is financially driven. And so a lot of changes are going to have to happen in order for people to truly open their eyes to know exactly what's going on around us and what's in the products that we use every day and the food that we eat every day. I mean, there's a huge, lobbying going on right now for just glyphosates that are in our, in our farming and our foods that we're eating every day. So I think some of it is political, unfortunately, and then some of it, as far as like from a conventional standard. We talked about this a minute ago about how a lot of conventional doctors just, they don't see the same way that we do because they didn't learn it in school, right? If you think back to when a lot of us, even when we were, when I was practicing bedside, a lot of things you don't realize until you take a step back and, your eyes are open to the things that are going on around you, right? Until you learn more, until you kind of step outside your box to learn things that you weren't aware about, like the dangers of vaccines and things that we're putting in our body and all the things that that the products and stuff that we use every day. So I guess, I mean, I think that it is a loaded question. I think that more and more people are starting to become aware of these things, in personal use products and trying to make better decisions. But a lot of this has kind of been behind the scenes that just now that more people are aware of this and aware of the things that we're being exposed to every day.
So I completely agree with you on when you said that it is political. Because
Yeah.
it's so interesting to me because I feel like 10 years ago, we had one certain political party that was, they basically started the crunchy mom movement, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
we've seen it flip Now we
Uh-huh.
see the
Yep,
other
yep.
political party that they're now,
Yes.
really, let's get let's do organic food and let's, use clean products. And, we see the other side being more skeptical of certain things that individuals are being exposed to. And again, like, I feel like if individuals just learn a little
Mhm.
bit about history, it wasn't that
Mhm.
long ago that physicians were promoting to pregnant women to smoke cigarettes. I mean, you can see
Yeah,
those old
right.
advertisements where it was like doctors
Yep.
smoke Camel cigarettes. And there's so
Yes.
many things that government institutions or large companies, because we know that the love of money is
Mhm.
a root of evil, and a lot of
Right.
times it's these big industries that are making a lot of money that are doing some very, very evil things. And then again,
Yeah.
like, on the other side of it, like when you mentioned individuals in the conventional system, they're really just in the middle of it, and there's so much groupthink. I mean, I've
Right.
never seen
Yeah.
so much groupthink in my life, and I really think it depends on what area of the country you're in. But if you're in an area of the country that is very, very political, that the side that is, not friendly right now to the holistic side, it can be very aggressive if you're a nurse and you're in that hospital environment, and
Right.
heaven forbid, you have the audacity to question the safety of vaccines. I mean,
Right.
it's like
Yeah.
a witch hunt. If
Yeah.
depending on your
Yeah, it's true.
environment. But, yeah, I talk to
Mhm.
nurses all over the country, and it really varies state by state and what community that you're in. But yeah, yeah, I mean, there's
That's
really just
interesting.
so it yeah, yeah, I just some of the things that I hear, and when you mentioned the politics, people are really going to social media now for their
Mhm.
information. Are
Right.
you on social media much? Have you noticed, like, an uptick in
Oh, yeah.
people that are
Well,
promoting ridiculousness?
yeah. Yeah, and, honestly, you see a lot of, I mean, obviously, your algorithm, whatever you're following, you're gonna see so much of that.
And this is one of the reasons, and again, like, I know people are probably finding out about this show on social media, so I think that there are, of course, good things about it, but there are and I really wish there were more regulations on this, because there are so many accounts that are clearly funded by industry that just spew propaganda. I mean, promoting that things like consuming petroleum based food dyes, that's just fine for you.
Oh,
Glyphosate is fine. People that say otherwise are crazy. Like, there's all of these insane things I hear on social media that people are listening to. And are you noticing just an uptick? I mean, I feel like it's everywhere now.
well, I think that I don't know how much I've seen of that, but I do think people are from the other side are really trying hard to, like divert your attention to truth, right? Like that's the way it is. Like whenever you hear things about how, red dye is really not that bad, or, they'll take out red dye, but the other dyes are totally fine, things like that. Or that everything in moderation is fine. That's what I hear a lot of. Everything in moderation is okay. You can use these facial or these personal hygiene products in moderation, and or that you can be exposed to this amount and then everything's still fine. So I think you hear a lot of that is where it's like they're trying to divert your attention to, like, okay, well, you realize it's bad, but it's not that bad. And so I think that's part of their distraction measures that they're using a lot. I think I see that more.
Oh, one of the most shocking ones I heard was a physician influencer talking about the mercury-based preservative thimerosal that has never been properly safety studied. And she was
Right.
like, it's just a little bit of mercury, and you just can't make this stuff up. And I really do. I try to always be hopeful that most people will see through it because and I
Right.
also think that, so many people are just trying to live their lives and get through the day, and people are so crazy busy and they're so bombarded with all of this
Yeah.
information, and there's
Yeah.
so much confusing data, mixed messaging. So sometimes people just don't know what to believe. But,
What to believe.
in my experience, the clients that are seeking functional medicine services, those are the individuals that are skeptical. And
Mhm.
then once you go through functional medicine with a good practitioner, then so many of these individuals are gonna have success stories, and then we all know you can't unsee that after it
Right.
happens. But,
Right.
we are actually about halfway through the show, but when we come back, I really, really would love to talk more about your business and some of these success stories. I know you mentioned you're having some amazing success stories that I wanna hear about. So to our listeners, I do want to remind you all, if you are a nurse and you're listening to this program, I can absolutely train you. Functional Nurse Academy is the most comprehensive functional training on the market, specifically designed for nurses. Our graduates receive 90 nursing CEs. They are eligible for multiple board certification pathways in functional medicine, and they even get business mentorship. So be sure that you check that out at functionalnurseacademy.com. You can also meet with me live at our next informational webinar, which I will drop in the show notes. This show is also syndicated on America Out Loud Talk Radio, on the Nurses Report radio show and podcast. So you can also find me there on any major app. Hello and welcome back. This is Melissa Schreibfetter. Today, I am joined by another one of my graduates at the Functional Nurse Academy, Koral Worsham, who is the founder of Redeeming Roots Functional Medicine. Welcome, Koral.
Thank you. Thanks for so much for having me.
Yes, it's always so fun to chat about these things. I love talking to like-minded nurses. And, I know we were just discussing how there's so much like mixed information out there and it is so political right now. But I wanted to shift the conversation to what you are doing in your business now. So I would love to hear about some of the success that you're having working with your client population.
Yeah, so I am absolutely loving and getting so much joy for doing what I'm doing. I am seeing everything from, little from kids with skin issues like really bad eczema, things like that, all the way to some more I guess, more serious, concerning things like patients with neuroinflammation and SIRS, mold toxicity, lots of gut stuff. And so I'm a broad range of things, which makes it fun. I don't really have, some people try to focus on like hormones, some try to focus on specific things, but I feel like I didn't really want to limit my practice to just one thing because I really enjoy doing all of them from kiddos to the my older adults that I see.
That's great. Yeah. And no, I think it is great to have just a variety of areas that you're well versed in because we know that God brilliantly designed our bodies. And,
Yeah.
a lot of times, regardless of the situation, we know that sometimes these basic, like foundational interventions, like good nutrition, nutrient repletion, gut health, stress, sleep, all of these things can help such a variety of conditions. And you
Right.
mentioned something that really caught my attention. So you said for
Yes.
our listeners, SIRS
Yep.
is CURS. And again, went around the ringer in functional medicine with all these leaky gut protocols and
Yeah.
crazy restrictive diets because I was reacting to I was like having reactions to healthy foods. I was
Right.
having reactions to chemicals. It was miserable. Heaven forbid, like when I had full blown SIRS, if I went to eat at a restaurant, even if it was like a farm to table restaurant, I would pay for it for about 5 days with a severe flare of chronic fatigue. So I would love to hear your experience working with your client who had SIRS.
Yeah, so I've had a few actually, but one in particular has been very rewarding to be able to see. He came to me and he was very ill. I mean, he swore he was dying. He thought he had ALS. He had been to, I think the time I saw him, he had been to 11 different specialists, including the Cleveland Clinic. And every single one of them had told him that pretty much that there was nothing wrong, like everyone. And this poor man couldn't sleep. He couldn't function. He couldn't work. He couldn't eat. I mean, he was just miserable. And so when he first came to me, we did one of the most important things, I think, especially with functional medicine, it's just a very, very detailed clinical history, and just to dig deep to see, okay, well, what are the exposures? What are the things that, all the things that, that go back, go back 10 years. I mean, he had maybe one of the things he had a brown recluse spider bite. He had mold exposure. He had heavy metal exposure. He had worked in like a metal factory for a long time. So, like we said before, it's a multifaceted thing with Sears. And so, one of the biggest things to know is that, I mean, the broadness of symptoms can be all over the place. And so one of his main complaints was that he had just significant muscle spasms and twitching that was keeping him up overnight. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Isaac's disease, or it looks like it's also called bag of worms, where it looks like your leg is just kind of moving, and they say it's bag of worms, but it's really muscle spasms, but it looks like there's something under the skin. And so that's even what was going on with him. And so one of the very first things that we did was we got him out of the environment that was causing him, that was making him ill. Always the most important thing. Um, he didn't know it at the time, but his home that he was living in was just totally infested with toxic mold. So that was the first thing that we needed to do. The second thing was we really needed to make sure that we calmed down the nervous system. He had been to, like I said, he had been to all these different specialists, including a specialist at the Cleveland Clinic, and the neurologist actually specifically told him, this is just something you're going to have to live with. Like, it's not going to go away. We can't, there's nothing, it's just the muscle spasms will always be there. And he was like, I cannot accept that. So as we worked on, modulating his immune system and just calming down the nervous system, I know that for some of our listeners may have heard of this, but LDN was a huge benefit for him. It's low dose naltrexone and just really calms the nervous system, calms the immune system down, and that was night and day for him. He felt like a different man once starting on that. And then we really just started working on healing him and getting rid of the mold, and they say he told me that he was 85 to 90% better, which was a huge improvement compared to someone who thought he truly was dying. He actually went back to the Cleveland Clinic, and the doctor couldn't believe how well he was doing, and actually he shared my information with him. So I thought that was funny, and and definitely brought some joy to my heart to know how well who he was doing since we had been working together.
Oh, that just makes me so happy to hear that, because so many people are suffering. And, when you have all of these symptoms and, these individuals, they have to live day by day in these bodies that are incredibly symptomatic. And we
Right.
know something like sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation is literally a form of torture. And it is
Yeah.
still just remarkable to me that some of our leading medical institutions in the country, such as the Cleveland Clinic, and I do hope that they call you and learn more about biotoxin exposure. But anyway, that is that's one of the reasons why I think it is so important. I always teach my students, to learn to assess for biotoxin
Mhm.
exposure because
Right.
about 25% of the population has a
Mhm.
genetic variation. It's called HLA-DR. I am
Mhm.
blessed to have that genetic variation myself. And people that have that can be healthy and thrive. However, individuals with that genetic variation have a difficult time properly metabolizing and detoxifying from biotoxins. And one of the
Right.
most common biotoxins is mold. And I want to do I'm like, I need to do another updated show on this because mold is a it is such a big deal. I mean,
It
I have helped
is.
so many people through this and I have seen it over and over and over where their symptoms match up. You can test for it. And then once you get them out of the environment or they get
Mhm.
the environment remediated and then you work to support the gut and detoxification and then they remarkably get better.
Right. Yep. And also too, I think people don't realize the range of symptoms that you can have from mycotoxin illness, right? Like somebody who, was so severe as he was, but then he had other members that were living in the same house as him and their symptoms were they did not even have the same symptoms, right? So now as I'm working with some of those other family members, I'm realizing that, absolutely some of the symptoms that they have made them feel so ill, but it's not even close to what his response was to the mold in the house.
And something common that I see. So, say that you have a family of four and there is a significant mold exposure in the home. And sometimes you can have a mold problem in the home and not have any visible water damage because
Right.
we know that there are even issues with the builders now. Sometimes the builders are
Mhm.
using supplies that are already contaminated with toxic mold, or say you're
Right.
building in rainy season and they're not cleaning that up appropriately. And then also, I live in one of the most humid places in the country in the wonderful state of Tennessee. And people really don't know, they're not aware that they need to control the humidity in their homes, especially if you've got like a basement and a crawl space. There's so many things that can be done to really mitigate that exposure. But it really is something it's not on the radar for a lot of healthcare professionals, and this is why I'm adamant about teaching about this because
Right.
I noticed, when I was a patient, most functional practitioners did not know about this. But anyway, back to what I usually see with a common presentation. So,
Mhm.
say that there's a family of four in a home with toxic exposure, you may have one person who's significantly ill, full
Mhm.
blown neurological disorder, autoimmune condition, things like that. And then you may have someone else who maybe they have asthma, eczema, something of that sort. And then
Right.
you could have two other people in that home that are totally fine, because
Right.
genetics
Yeah.
are amazing. We all have that friend or relative that can literally eat whatever they want, smoke cigarettes, drink alcohol, and have zero health issues. Okay, those are the
Right.
those are the
Right.
kind of similar genetic makeup of the people who may be able to live in a home with toxic mold and not have any symptoms. So, but that is something that I see people getting dismissed about because they're like, well, if you had that in your home, everyone would have what you have. And it's like, no, no,
Right.
it doesn't
Exactly.
work that
That's
way.
the
So,
case.
but that
No.
is so amazing that you were able to help him. And I also want to circle back around because you mentioned
Mhm.
LDN. So, for our
Yes.
listeners,
Yes.
LDN is a low dose naltrexone, which is a repurposed drug that is used in baby doses for immune modulation. And tell me, so I know that you're a registered nurse, not a prescriber. Is that correct?
Right. That is true, and so I had to be very creative. Now I actually have a couple providers that I collaborate with, and so if I do have patients that need certain medications that they can benefit from, I actually collaborate with a couple that are specific and that I work well with, which has been very nice. But I had to be very creative with him because he was actually in a state that I was unable to find anybody that would be able to prescribe it for him. And so there was actually it was called the LDN doctor online. And so it was actually like a telehealth practice that was able to prescribe that for him, which was amazing. But so that's one of the things I think we deal with a lot in our we're good at as nurses, is being very, very creative in our care and finding solutions, that will make them better and help heal them. Yeah.
And well, and I think that that is just where we shine. We are
Yeah.
really good at, like, advocating, collaborating. We're great at
Right.
talking to doctors. A
Mhm.
doctor loves an organized, helpful nurse because again, this is another reason why, and I hear this a lot with individuals that get a neurology referral, that a lot of times the neurologists are just not up to date with all of the things that are going
Right.
on, especially when
Yep.
we talk about, like, POTS, PANS,
Yeah.
PANDAS, all of these,
Right.
like, complex
Yeah.
conditions that we are now recognizing, yes, this is a thing and these people need treatment. But
Right.
something else I hear in functional medicine, and
Mhm.
I feel like whenever there's something good, there's always pushback. But
Yeah.
something else I hear is that nurses shouldn't be practicing functional medicine because they're not doctors, or you have to be a nurse practitioner to do
Right.
this.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this? Because I know as a registered nurse, kind of like
Yeah.
me, like I'm also a registered nurse. I don't
Right.
want any additional conventional education. Like I'm done with them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
what's your feedback and experience? Being able to launch your business as a registered nurse.
Yeah, so I'm very much a rule follower. So I'm very careful to stay within my scope of practice, but I tell all of my patients that when they come, and that when they come in, that my job is to educate them. My job is to teach you what your body is trying to tell you. And so not only am I helping them, figure out like what the root cause of their issue is, but I'm also really teaching them about how their body's talking to them, and then how they can realize, over time, which is one of the most fun things to watch, is that, I just had a patient not too long ago, right before we started talking, text me, and she was talking about how she was so bloated, and she realized it was this, and this. And she was like, and it was so much fun because I realized what my body was trying to tell me. And so, being able to teach our patients, what the way that God designed our bodies to be, that they talk to us, that the symptoms are actually things that they're trying to, our body's trying to tell us that's wrong. And so that's one of the most important things I think in my practice that I do is education. And then also to, obviously drawing labs, I'm careful to make sure that all of my labs are drawn underneath a physician's order, and that all of my interpretations are truly educating. Interpretations of labs are truly educating my patients of what's really going on and what they mean, so that they can be the best advocate for themselves as well.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love that explanation. And I tell my clients too that, when I'm doing a lab review, it's very different from a lab review that a physician will do because I'm using that
Right.
to educate them about potential dysfunctions, patterns of dysfunction, potential obstacles to the from that are preventing the body from healing.
Right.
And then some of those are honestly pretty simple things. Like it is
Yeah.
still just like it is
Yeah.
so astounding to me that individuals with the amount of evidence that we have, and it just
Mhm.
makes sense when the body does not have the essential nutrients to function, we see
Right.
the body start to break down and we see disease and dysfunction. And
Right.
we have so much evidence on this, just simple things like a vitamin D. We know low
Right.
vitamin D is
Absolutely. Yeah.
associated with like mental illness, neurological disorders. It
Right.
also is low vitamin D is also associated with metabolic issues, such as issues with our insulin sensitivity.
Yeah.
And why in the world would that not be included and an annual
I know.
physical. But
I know, I
again,
argue that
yeah,
all the time.
uh,
And one of the other things that is wild to me is the medications that people are put on, half of them create nutrient deficiencies or, for instance, I have a lot of POTS patients, especially recently that have been coming to me that are on Florinef. Well, Florinef is the most common side effect for Florinef is electrolyte imbalance, which is crazy because if somebody with POTS who has electrolyte imbalance is just going to make symptoms worse. And then you give them medication that are making their symptoms worse, that are causing the problem in the first place. So that's just, it's so crazy. All of the medications, the lists of medications that people come with, they don't realize that half of those are actually, the root cause of why they may be feeling the way that they're feeling in the first place.
so I spend a lot of time I read so many medication inserts and then also
Hmm.
the nutrient deficiencies that certain medications cause.
Right.
Those are not listed on the insert. And and again, I'm not even surprised by it anymore, but like I cannot, and I'm sure you've had this experience too. I cannot
Hmm.
count how many times I have had somebody come to see me with these certain symptoms that just happen to be listed as severe adverse reactions to the medication that they're being prescribed from their provider, and their provider just doesn't catch it. Do you see that
Right.
too?
I do. I see that frequently actually. And for whatever reason, the influx of POTS patients that I've had recently, Florinef was one of them that they actually went back to their cardiologist and showed them like the significant imbalance of electrolytes, like concerning imbalances, right? Potassium is either, is like way like bottomed out, their sodium is low. And so all these electrolytes that are really truly causing probably the majority of the symptoms that they have, they don't realize, and the doctor's like, "Oh, I guess I probably should have looked or drawn labs to see that." So then they'll look at the labs that I've drawn and then either reduce their medication or the dosage or take them off of it completely. And so I do see that a lot. And a lot of times too is being able just to collaborate and even educate a lot of these physicians that don't realize that that is the case, is writing a letter to these physicians to say, "Hey, these are the medications that they're on. These are the nutrient deficiencies that they're causing. Here are their labs for proof." And then we can move forward on either weaning or, adjusting medications accordingly.
Yes, and something else I see commonly is and I feel like just talking about this topic, I could just feel my blood pressure going up. I think I may need to have a glass of wine when I do these shows. But
Yes.
anyway, so something like metformin,
Mhm,
which to our non-medical listeners, that helps to lower blood sugar. It's very commonly prescribed for type 2 diabetics, and that is
mhm.
known to deplete vitamin B12. But then
Yep,
vitamin B12 is also needed for so many things in the body, especially things like conversion of your thyroid hormone. It's so
yep,
important. And people will be prescribed metformin and no one, thinks to, order the, $10 out of pocket vitamin B12 blood
right.
test. How does that
Mhm.
happen? And then also people aren't told that there are alternatives, we've seen in
Right,
studies, and again, the herbal studies, of course, are gonna be smaller sizes because, again, herbs are not as high risk as medications are, And
yeah.
so, but anyway, the herbal supplement berberine was shown to be just as effective as metformin, and it doesn't have all of these crazy side effects. But are patients being told that that is an alternative? No, they absolutely are not. But if they're working with a functional medicine nurse, they're going to hear about it,
Yeah,
that way they
they
get their
sure will,
options.
absolutely,
So
they will.
well, I'm so glad that you're doing this work. It makes me so happy that like we're just pumping out more and more nurses that know what they're
Yes.
doing and are changing people's lives. So I know again, whenever I do these shows with my students, like I know we have listeners that are going to want to work with you. So where do our listeners go to find you?
Yeah, so, I'm either on Facebook, you can find me on Facebook at, Redeeming Roots Functional Medicine, or on my website, that is redeemingrootsfunctionalmedicine.com, either one of those, and, I'm pretty active on my Facebook account, so you can message me through either one.
And also, you are offering our listeners an offer. Is that right?
Yeah, so always have a complimentary discovery call. I just love to
Awesome.
chat with new people, and so feel free to reach out. We'll set up a time that we can chat, make sure that we're a great fit, and then I can let you know how I can help. And then also too, for the listeners, I'm offering $100 off of any package that they sign up for.
Wonderful. Okay, so I will be putting that in the show notes. And
Okay.
I also like to discuss access. So I know most of the Functional Nurse Academy students, many of them have multi state
Uh
access.
huh.
What
Yeah.
is your situation?
So I'm what they call a compact license as well. So I can I'm in many states. I see a majority of my patients are out of Florida and North Carolina, but there's only a handful of states that I am unable to practice in.
Okay, great. Yeah, and again, I know eventually all of the states will be in the compact, but
Right.
it's getting up there. I mean, I was so happy when I saw. I was like, yes, we have 43 states in the
I
compact.
know. I
So
know.
because it
Yep.
really expands access to quality care,
Yep.
and so I also did want to ask you. So okay, as far as labs are
Hmm.
concerned, so I see that you're able to order labs, and
Yeah.
you're ordering labs under the MD at your partnering laboratory.
Hmm.
So for clients that are out of state, how does that work if you order labs for them?
So most of the time, I either use, like I said, as long as I'm able to practice in your state, then I just use either Quest or I use LabCorp. And so typically we just schedule an appointment. They would schedule an appointment ahead of time with one of those drawing sites, and then the lab order they would just take with them, so they could go to any of those.
Yeah, I frequently think back to what I went through being undiagnosed with Hashimoto's, the autoimmune condition that causes hypothyroidism. And now I have hypothyroidism thanks to me being undiagnosed for forever. But I remember even before I got into functional medicine going through this, I was like, if I just had a nurse, if I just had someone to like look at my symptoms and my labs and make
Hmm.
sure that I was getting the appropriate labs ordered,
Right.
you know, I mean,
Yeah.
that could have prevented a lifetime dependency on thyroid hormone, but I
Oh,
do wonder, like, getting all these functional nurses out there, because
mhm.
we know that functional medicine, it is evidence-based, and we know that,
Yeah.
like, yes, okay, it does insurance typically is not going to cover it, but health
Right.
shares are reimbursing and HSA and FSA and all of that great stuff. But it may
Mhm.
be a little bit more money up front, but then overall, long term, it is so less expensive because we know
Right.
functional medicine improves outcomes and reduces long term healthcare costs. So,
Right.
yeah, I'm really hoping. And again, we've had some like, sometimes I'm like, "Did hell freeze over?" Because it's interesting that in the US government, they're actually talking about functional medicine.
I
I
know,
mean,
I know, it's been so much fun to follow. Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yep.
and I almost like and they had a roundtable on Lyme disease, like, I almost fell out of my
Uh,
seat, I was so excited, so but it is really, I have a lot of hope now, you know, because I think
right.
that I think there's actually things in motion to make this type of care more accessible, and,
Right.
I also wanted to ask, I always like to hear from our students about their experience going through Functional Nurse Academy.
Yes. So, I tell whenever I talk about FNA, I like rave about it because it gave me the foundation that I really needed, not only foundational wise in like truly learning about functional medicine, and how to actually, like what that means, what root cause medicine really is, but also starting my business. That was huge. Just the, and I've had several people reach out to me from our Facebook page that we have, for functional nurses that have wanted to know more information about it. And I think that the biggest concern is that, people just are scared to just take the leap. And so that's one thing that I always encourage them, just do it. Like you learn so much. And I know it's scary to try to start a practice and all the unknowns with it, but you just have to kind of take that leap of faith and do it. And be able to, trust that, trust the your knowledge, trust your training, and be able to move forward. But as far as the actual schooling goes and the foundation that I got from it, it was, I mean, honestly, like it was absolutely worth the money for sure. And I've made back probably tenfold since then. So
Oh, yay, wonderful. Because unfortunately, like, I do hear from nurses, like, a lot that go to, like, 10 or $15,000
yeah,
programs,
yeah,
and and again, like, I know there are wonderful training programs out there,
right.
but sometimes I hear these stories of nurses going into debt, and then they're not happy with their training, and then they're not
Well, they
prepared,
didn't feel like
and
they
then
had
they
a good foundation.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then they end up in FNA, but I really wanted to because again, I think everything that we do shouldn't be about money. And I'm a
Right,
big believer that, yeah, the love of money is certainly evil. So I feel
right.
like with
Yeah.
how I have FNA priced, like I know it's like below market value, but because
Mhm.
it's priced that way, it is far more accessible.
To
And
people, yeah.
we're training more and more nurses, and like each nurse that is trained is going to have this massive positive trickle down effect because you guys are out there with your businesses and you're helping so many people. And
Right.
I frequently think back to when I had my first baby and I wanted to be a mom so bad. I was so excited for my little baby, and then I was sick for 3 years. I was not able to be present because it took me that long to find somebody to help me. And I am hearing from like nurses all the time that you know, they're hearing from their clients that they were helped the most by a functional nurse than they were
Right.
from any other specialist or doctor that they've worked with.
Yeah, I hear that from all my clients, and that it
Yeah.
truly does, especially the ones that, like obviously we do it because it brings us so much joy to our hearts, right? Like that's one of the reasons why, God creates nurses most nurses as servants. And so being able to provide that service to our patients and our clients and be able to help them when nobody else could is such a rewarding thing to be able to do.
Yeah, I also think so I remember and, I feel like so many of us have been through the same things. I remember when I used to work on a regular unit, and
Mm.
of course, you're always short-staffed. I mean,
Oh yeah.
administration, they're
Yeah.
real happy to come around and make sure that they take up your coffee cups and your water bottles, but they're not gonna make sure they staff the unit, okay? And,
Right.
I remember, like, coming home after because 'cause they're never just 12-hour shifts. They're
Hmm.
like 13 to 14
Yeah.
oh, to
14.
16-hour
Yeah.
shift with no break. I'm like, "What other, profession works their employees like this?" But anyway,
Mhm.
I would come home like a zombie at like 8 o'clock, and I remember my husband being like, "You cannot do this anymore. Like, this
Right.
is gonna kill you." But,
Yeah.
yeah, like, once leaving that, like, crazy environment and then
Mhm.
being self-employed, and then you actually see people get better,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just I mean, it's the most amazing thing to actually have, like, a purposeful career, so
It is. Yes, I agree.
well, amazing. Well, again, I am just super excited about all of the great work that you're doing, and I think that you are gonna I mean, I really think that your practice is just gonna blow up. I mean, especially if
Yeah.
you're already getting this type of feedback,
Mhm.
and, yeah, so for our listeners, I'm going to leave all of Coral's links in the show notes for you guys, but I also am gonna put a direct link to her scheduling call. That way, if you wanna work with her, but you're just kinda like, "Oh, I don't know if it's the right fit," she will get on the phone with you for free, which I think also says something because it's like
Yes.
it can be really daunting choosing a functional practitioner to work with, and I think
Right.
it's, like, important that that person gets on the phone with you, so I love that so many of our students, and graduates are doing that. So,
Yes.
well, make sure that you check out her links in the show notes. And thank you for taking the time to chat with me. It's so great to finally meet.
I know. I know. It's been so nice. Thank you so much. This was fun. I feel like we could chat for hours. So,
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's my favorite thing to do. It's funny. My husband is quiet and I can't shut up. I just talk all the time. But anyway, that is all the time that we have today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And again, if you want to learn more about the Functional Nurse Academy, please feel free to register for our next live webinar, and you will see that link in the show notes. You can also check out Functional Nurse Academy on our social media platforms or on our website at functionalnurseacademy.com. Until next time, be safe, be well, and God bless.